Hi there, it's Paulie here. So it's been Transgender Week of Visibility. Transgender Week of Visibility ends with our Transgender Day of Remembrance. This is where we have little ceremonies where it's a memorial to the transgender people who were murdered over the year or forced into suicide. It's been a year of heavy casualties. My week of visibility began with me being violently assaulted by three men who thought they'd do some tranny bashing. This is our lives. So I want to do some transgender history for you to end the week, because I do get questions from viewers as to where does all this hatred come from? Where is it? Why is it? And the answer to that is actually disturbingly simple. It is entirely manufactured. It is an artificial creation by extremely evil people who are looking to utilize it as a way to gain power and to gain fortune. It's always money and power. Where to start? All right. 2015. Before Trump's initial run for president, he has yet to go down that sodding golden elevator. Cast your mind to the depths of Houston, Texas. Houston, Texas had a lesbian mayor at the time. And there was a referendum, and it was the equality rights referendum. A big part of the human rights referendum was the proposition that transgender people, human beings, deserve the same rights as all other human beings. A group of ultra-right-wing Christo-fascist ideologues, these are not made-up words, by the way. Christo-fascism is a bitterly real thing. You are seeing it in the USA now. A fascist state run according to the vicious principles by a group who declare themselves to be the Christian elite. A cabal of these people wanted to destroy that referendum, to get a no vote in. They tried framing a panic that equal rights for gay people would somehow lead to assaults in bathrooms. Now, this had been tried back in the late 60s and early 70s as second wave feminism had begun. Lesbians will attack women in bathrooms if we allow lesbians to be a thing. And it failed back then. In the 80s, particularly as the AIDS scare came out, there was an attempt to push gay people, if allowed to run around loose, will attack you in bathrooms. This too had lost its traction. The right suddenly were without levers because abortion rights in the USA were supposedly settled law. Gay marriage was now a thing. Under Obama, that's it, ratified gay marriage. They were desperate. They wanted to destroy all of it. Rights for gay people, rights for women, rights to women's bodily autonomy. They wanted to destroy the entire equal rights movement. That's races, that's everything. This is their heart's desire. But there's no wedge issue. So in the Houston referendum, their attempt to play the gay card failed. But then they came up with an idea. In fact, one man came up with an idea. Texas pastor David Welch, remember the name. He reframed this as transgender women will attack women in bathrooms. Now, no one had really heard of transgender women. They weren't a thing. Gays, they were kind of used to seeing and hearing about because there'd been 20, 30 years of gay activism, and people had kind of crossed the trans community off as just part of the gays. But this narrowing actually gave them something that stuck. Transgender women are obviously a very alien thing. They might be coming for us. They might be coming from the women right now. They did it. They used it as a lever, and that bill failed. That referendum, nope. Transgender people are not human, according to Texas. I won't give you my opinion on Texas because YouTube is not built for an Australian's particular mode of conversation. Anyway, the Heritage Foundation, you remember them, the architects of Project 2025, which is an outline for the destruction of the US government and replacing it with an eternal dictatorship run along ultra-right-wing, ultra-patriarchal Christian principles. Those guys. They took this as a blueprint. They essentially copy-pasted the objection to that human rights referendum and prepared it essentially as a pack that could be given out anywhere one of these referendums appeared again. Now, this David Welch, as this bill was being voted, as it was failing to pass, out comes a strange petition. Now, this petition was supposedly signed by 1,000 gay and bi people, but there were no names. They were completely anonymous. There was no verification of these as being real people. Now, I do a lot of work in politics, a lot of work, quite high up in politics. I assure you, actual petitions have a very set format. To make it a valid petition, the petitioners have to actually be verified as real people. The point of a petition is to try and show there is some sort of public opinion on a matter. That's why an official petition, you'll notice it online. It will ask you, what's your address? What's your phone number? What's your email address? You'll be sent something to verify that email address, to verify that you are a real person. There's a process. This petition had none of these things. And this petition said, drop the T. That's where this came from. This was the beginning of the drop the T movement, which has been adopted by the Pick-Me gays. Is it simply speculation that Welch somehow concocted this entire petition out of his arse? No. It essentially was done entirely through his offices, and Welch works with the FRC, the Family Research Centre, which is a hate group. It is a hate group entirely organised to the destruction of rights for gay, transgender people and women and people of colour. That you can have an organisation like that still. But anyway, that's the FRC. Remember that. So this is what we call astroturfing, when someone attempts to pretend that a movement is a grassroots movement. In fact, in other words, shows what the populace actually wants and believes. Astroturfing is faking that, which is what a fake petition is for. That petition was immediately rebutted by a huge one from the actual gay, lesbian, and bi population of Houston, Texas. I believe they got something like 22,000 signatures immediately. But it doesn't matter, because the right wing then has their fake petition in hand to say, but this is what the people want. FRC and David Welch. So, spin on slightly. 2017. Now, you may or may not have heard of CPAC, which is it is a sodding horrible conference for the ultra-right to get the various organisations to get together to discuss strategies for effectively destroying human rights. In 2011, CPAC was in trouble because what called in America log cabin gays. Well, I don't know. These are right-wing Republican gay people wanted to come to CPAC and be represented. Some other groups and some key speakers were not going to show up if the gays turned up. And this is the thing that gets me with Pick Me Gays. This is your own organisation saying they hate you so much. They despise your very existence on Earth so much. They refuse to be in a Titanic exhibition centre with you. But anyway, they will fight for those people's rights to take away their right. But anyway, CPAC was floundering. That Family Research Council was heavily pushing a potential rival to CPAC, which was the Values Voter Summit. Now, the Values Voter Summit still operates today. It is much diminished from what it was, but it was looking like a serious contender as a rival to CPAC for a while there. Trump and co made sure that they would speak at these horrendous hate gatherings. In 2017, at a keynote speech, the chair of the board of Concerned Parents, which, represents 5 hate mongers and their dachshund, she came up to give the Divide and Conquer speech. Her name was Meg Kilgannon. Now, she delivered a speech and it's recorded. This is what I mean when I say evil actually keeps sodding notes and minutes. Okay. The title of the speech was Divide and Conquer to defeat the totalitarianism of trans inclusion. Quote, "For all its recent successes, the LGBT alliance is actually fragile, and trans activists need the gay rights movement to help legitimize them. If we remove and separate the T from the alphabet soup, we will have more success. Once we divide them, we can destroy them in detail." She then continues in a long speech to propose exactly how to essentially try and split the LGBTQ movement by bringing on board what are called the Pick Me Gays. Now, Quislings have been a problem in the gay liberation movement from its very beginning. Way back in the 60s, the first gay movements were very, very keen to show that gay people are just ordinary white-class middle Americans like the rest of you. They wear plaid sweaters as they play golf, and they like joshing about and having a cocktail while listening to Dean Martin. Still a very powerful thing today. Look, human beings are social animals, and male gays do not like to feel on the outside of society. A path some have taken is to attempt to make themselves as acceptable as possible to the toxic elements of cis maleness. We're going to josh around in the locker room with the rest of them. These are the pick me gays. I'm just like you. Pick me as your friend. Pick me, pick me, pick me. After the Stonewall riots, this same group of guys tried to immediately muscle in to take over the Pride Parade there. They managed, on the third Pride Parade, to ban transgender people. Marsha Johnson and the rest of the trans community formed their own parade ahead of the main trans parade, and they led it off because no one is going to silence us. But this is what these people are. And what Kilgannon proposed was to weaponize these people, to actually start welcoming them into these right-wing conferences and show that there is acceptance within the right-wing community as long as they agree to destroy transgender rights. It was laid out as an actual thing. Now, the other thing that she laid out was the destruction of feminism. She says in many quotable speeches, she despises feminism and she wants it destroyed. Her quote for here was, "But we must sell transgenderism to them as the ultimate form of misogyny because they erase womanhood." Have you heard that phrase? Have you heard that screamed by 1,000 of these damn TERFs? You've seen it on every set of banners that these people wave in those British demonstrations where, you know, they're trying to destroy trans rights. It's this woman's words. This is what they're saying. She did it. And again, her speech there says, we will split feminism the same way. We will split the decent ones who realise that transgender rights and feminist rights are the same struggle against the same foe. And we will, again, hold out an olive branch to show some that there is actually a place somewhere within patriarchal structure that can be yours. Comfort and acceptance can be yours if you betray the T. These are actual tactics that they decided to pursue. Now, Megan Kilgallen's other thing that she's currently off doing, she is a champion of the home vote. The home vote means that you as a young woman, you don't vote. Your father knows what's best for you. The man of the household will vote. Wives, they don't vote. Your husband knows what's best. You're just a woman. She's a champion for the destruction of women's voting rights. When you hear a TERF open their mouth, they are serving Megan Kilgallen. They are serving the plan that she laid out for the right-wing multimillionaire elite of the USA as their means of taking power by destroying the forces that were spearheading human rights and liberation. When you hear a TERF speak, it's just Megan Kilgallen's dog barking. Names and dates, people. I'd like to introduce you now to Terry Schilling. Well, I don't want to introduce you to Terry Schilling, but I've got to show you more of these people. Terry Schilling is the head of the APP. The APP are the main advertising body that does propaganda adverts for the American Republican Party. They have their tentacles into many other countries and other things, but this is what they do. They came from relatively minor roots. In 2015, there's that magic year again, Schilling had also been involved with the Family Research Council, where discussions on how to destroy transgender rights and why these needed to be destroyed from their point of view. He had been in those discussions. And he went to Mar-a-Lago, where he met with Trump, and he proposed to Trump that transgender rights should be used as a wedge issue with which to destroy the Democrats. Abortion wasn't really working. They were trying to pretend that it was settled law and they wouldn't touch it. They couldn't attack gay marriage. They wanted to try this. And it's a very strange thing to have chosen, to be honest, because their successes were low. This is the problem with ideologues, but once an ideologue gets monetary backing, once he got the money fountain that was Trump and his ability to convince rubes to pay money into these things, that's where the APP got its power. Schilling says, what does he say here, actually? I shall quote, "The women's sports issue was really the beginning point in helping to create all this, because what it did was it got opponents of the LGBTQ movement comfortable with talking about transgender issues. Essentially, no one knew anything about transgender issues." He also says, "We tested trying to find negative aspects about putting gender identity into civil law. They kept trying to do adverts, trying to ring alarms about the terrible disasters that would happen if transgender people, got human rights. And that wasn't hitting. They weren't getting traction with these ads. It was fail after fail after fail after fail. But they had money behind them. So they kept trying and trying and trying. What have we got here? Right, so move to 2016 in the election year. So there is a gubernatorial election in North Carolina. This was the first state, by the way, to pass a bathroom bill. That title, bathroom bill, by the way, that's Welch. He invented the name. That's what he renamed and rebranded the human rights referendum as. But anyway, they had brought this thing out and it was costing them. It was destroying the state. Businesses had sworn that if this was passed, they would leave. And they did. It reamed the state economy. In this new election, the Democrat was running on removing that bathroom ban, and the Democrat won. Despite everything the APP could do, it won. They looked and they figured they had managed to shift a few points, however, by screaming about trans people. So they were encouraged, but running on that issue, they still lost. Schilling then says the Democrats had a clear playbook that won for them. We had to find a way to destroy it. This quote here. We ran into disbelief. People did not believe that transgender people could cause the social destruction that these guys wildly claimed they would. We needed more stories to come out. We needed to flood the zone. This is why you see so much about trans people. I've had so many right-wing guys online screaming that we're sick and tired of seeing trans people everywhere. You do it. It's deliberate. It's paid for. In fact, all of these idiots that have paid money to Trump and everything, they have physically paid to have news about transgender people thrown onto their screens daily. It's an actual thing that these guys did because they wanted everybody to be talking about transgender people. That's why you see it on every damn newspaper. If you open your YouTube and your Facebook browser, I swear to you, there will be anti-trans stuff, or the trans are doing this, or transgender news. It will be there. There's almost none of us on the planet. I know, I'm one of us. But these guys just made it the topic of the day. I'm a military historian. Any opinion I have on design of the jet engines of British fighters in the 1960s is probably a bit moot. I'd really want an expert to talk about that. But in these great internet days, suddenly everyone's an expert on transgender people without ever having met one, talked to one, or read so much as a proper Google article. Anyway, 2019, the APP debuts the big sports lie. This is one of the big transgender lies, that transgender women are somehow going to dominate sports. So there was a Kentucky gubernational. The APP pushed this and they lost the election again. They're still losing. Dakota Governor Kristi Noem, she had vetoed a bill. What was this one on? This was a sports bill. This was a bill banning transgender girls from joining their sisters in playing sports. She had vetoed it for fear of the repercussions because she's seen these losses. But now the APP came up with a different tactic. They said, run on this, as in remove the veto and put this bill back in place, or the APP will not put advertising and advertising funds into any of your campaigning. Since this is the major conduit for Trump's money coming into right-wing candidates in the USA, that's a death sentence. They used their money to force the message. She put the bill back in place. In 2022, they did exactly the same in Texas. Abbott, he was vetoing a bill that was banning healthcare for transgender children. Again, the APP threatened to remove advertising funding from him unless he took his veto off the bill. They began using Trump money to force their agenda. So it looks like there's this tide, that somehow the tide has turned against transgender people. The people have risen. They haven't. A highly moneyed elite who have access to nigh infinite funds because the wedge issue gives them something to scream from the rooftops. That's who's done it. That's who's done it. We're in the hands of a media machine constructed entirely to fool people into believing that there is a crisis that does not exist. Let's be really clear on the sports issues. Olympics, there's been one transgender woman in all history. Truly. She was a New Zealand weightlifter in, I think, 2016, and she did not qualify for the finals. She failed her lifts. If there is one event in which you would think someone that went through male puberty, blah, 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 and came out as a woman, would dominate in, you would think it would be weightlifting. She got reamed, flogged, overrun, smashed, obliterated by cis women. It's a lie. But it sounds reasonable, and this is what I mean by they were trying to find different angles to come at. Don't say we need to ban trans women in sports. Say, is it fair that your little girl should compete in sports against a man? No, that sounds terrible, etc. Evil has names attached to it. Evil has agendas, but you've got to realise this does not represent popular sentiment. This does not represent belief. If you took a poll of individuals, you would still find the transgender community is supported. We have allowed a system in which big money is physically allowed to shape public dialogue and public consciousness to meet its own sinister needs. The United States today is a ruin. I'm a historian. A big chunk of my first history degree was in rise of fascist state structures in the early 20th century. America ticks all the same boxes. Mass destruction of human rights, destruction of the rights of minorities, panegyric nationalism, hatred of women, hatred of foreigners, growing worship of military and militarism. It's all the boxes. Someone that wanted that state of affairs, someone that wished to create a dictatorship where a small group of ultra-right-wing religious fanatics would dictate the way you live, eat, think, what you can wear, what songs you listen to, what books you can read, how your kids will be educated, where they'll go to school. Every aspect of your life dictated by these people's ideology. The people who wanted that decided to use people like me as the wedge to take everything from you. Anyway, somebody asked where it came from. I found the names. Transgender Week of Visibility is important. Here in Perth, Australia, the week after is our big Pride Parade. As I said, I was physically attacked 6 days ago by 3 guys. I'm still here. I will be leading off a section of that parade. I've been asked to join up with one of the political floats, and I will be there marching. We are the trans. We're here. We have always been here, and we always will. Anyway, much love to everybody, and look after yourselves out there, but be seen. Live magnificently and fight the bastards.